Oh, shit. We're live. All right, for anybody watching at home or later on, you're going to see a lot of moving parts and pieces, a lot of button pressing. This is the first time ever, so stay off my nuts too hard. Almost didn't record the audio. That would have been fucking tragic. Oh, too much going on. Oh, my God. All right. So we're going to go here. I'm going to mute me. Greetings, friends. This is Why Whiskey, a history podcast with a whiskey problem. Or is it a whiskey podcast with a history problem? We'll let you decide. Head on up to the bar, grab a stool and a drink, and let's talk. All right, good evening, goobers. We are back at the Bar of Questionable Life Choices. I am your host, Ian. This is Why Whiskey. Tonight, we're going to be talking about a government program led by the fledgling intelligence agencies of the United States during and after World War II. This program was designed to capture and exploit Nazi science and the scientists who discovered all these things in an operation that we called Paperclip, or that was called Paperclip. Now, some new stuff tonight. For those of you who might be watching this on YouTube, yes, my friends, we are now streaming live on YouTube. The video of this podcast will be up. This is a first for Why Whiskey, which means I have to buy beer. So for my subscribers, I owe you a beer, but you have to come to me. That's the deal. Coming back for another session of government shenanigans is my good friend Jesse, the parachute extraordinaire, tin hat making phenomenal dude. Jesse, welcome back.
Hey, I'm glad to be back. I'm also honored to be your first guest as far as doing the video podcast. So cool, thanks,
dude. I couldn't think of anybody better. Like I just and the topic itself is going to be awesome because it's so deep and it's kind of in our. Actually, we touched on that the last time.
Yes.
During MK Ultra, we mentioned this, and I think we actually hinted the fact that we were gonna do another episode, a follow on during that. So it's taken us a little while. Shit, was that January?
I mean, a lot of traveling, so it is what it is.
It goes by so fast. So fast. My goodness. All right. Well, it's all good things. Before we get too far, I believe we should wet the whistle a little bit. So glasses are there in front of you. We are opening up 3 new bottles this evening. The first is a Speyside Scotch called Lismore. It comes in at 40 ABV or 80 proof. Reading the reviews and the write-out, ooh. That cork does not look happy. It smells good, though.
As long as it smells happy.
Yeah, I was gonna say it smells happy, so woo. So we should be good there. You ready, friend?
Yep.
All right, so this is from the. I don't know. Remember what we drank last time. So Scotch is gonna be a little bit grassy. This is the distillery that this comes from doesn't make their own stuff. They just source it. So there's not a lot known about it. It's wicked cheap. This actually got recommended to me by Seth from Broken Barrel Whiskey when I did my episode with him. This is one of the couple of scotches he said get your hands on and give it a shot. So at $22, even if it sucks, I don't think we can go wrong. So here's to YouTube Live. Holy shit, and being a video thing now.
Hell yeah, dude.
Cheers, friend. It's dirty. It's a dirty scotch. It's not terrible, but a whole lot of malt, whole lot of grass, a lot of warmth, a lot of heat.
Yeah, definitely. It has a lot of heat
For an 80 proof.
for sure. Like,
Yeah. I can pretty much drink Jim Beam with a straw, straight out of the bottle, and that's the same. And this is hot. Man, I would be really interested to know like how old this is. I wonder if this is young. Warms up. I mean the nose warms up a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. It was good.
All right.
Yeah.
Ooh. Let's see what the interwebs say about it. It is a mystery malt, or a bastard malt, as they call it. The Malt Maniacs. I don't know who those people are or exactly what they do. It is made by William Lundy and Company. Like I said, they don't make any of their own whiskey. They just have they source everything. So basically, other people make it, they bring it, they age it, then they distribute it out. So no age statement. We talked about the proof, all that's there. They do say that it's not bad if you want to use it as something when guests come over or in cocktails, which means it's a mixing scotch. Although a scotch and a cocktail, unless it's something smoky, I don't think would be a thing.
No, doesn't
Like
sound right.
it's just too much earth and like I don't know. It's not like that sweet bourbon stuff. All right. Well, hey man, let's get after it. So Operation Paperclip. Now, before we get into it. I was able to do some research and some studying. Actually wrote a paper for a history class that had a bunch of this information in it. The subject of the paper was looking at not so much paperclip, but how German science excelled and why it excelled and why were we, America and Russia, 20 years behind in science. And what's crazy, something we're going to touch on a little bit later here, is the exfil of scientists once the Nazis start taking over in the mid-30s. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, another crazy thing about it though was like this is like obviously our last podcast was about MK Ultra. It was way more conspiratorial, way more covered up. This was covered up as well, but I was surprised to find out that it was pretty much at the time, like within a few years, like it was common news and common knowledge that this happened, and somehow it just disappeared from like just the common like conversations of American people. Like more things got introduced as far as politics and whatever else, and people kind of forgot about it and shrugged it off. So
Yeah.
I thought that was weird.
We're going to talk about that too because it almost got it exposed entirely twice before it came out for real not too long ago.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll get all to that. So the program, this is the jumping off point, right? So we'll go to the synopsis given to us by our good friends over at the Wikipedia site there. All right. It says, quote, the program, the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff established the first secret recruitment program called Operation Overcast in July 20th of 1945, initially to assist the shortening of the Japanese War and to aid our post-war military research. The term Overcast was the name given by the German scientists' family members for the housing camp that they were held in Bavaria. Late summer of 45, the JCS established a JIOA, a subcommittee of the Joint Intelligence Community, to direct and oversee Operation Overcast and later Operation Paperclip. The JIOA representatives included the Army's Director of Intelligence, the Chief of Naval Intelligence, the Assistant Chief of Air Staff, Air Force, eventually called, and a representative from the State Department. In November of 1945, Operation Overcast was renamed Operation Paperclip by the Ordnance Corps officers, it's hard to read, who would attach a paperclip to the folders of those rocket experts whom they wished to employ in America. So, nice words, doesn't mention that the scientists and the science that they pursued, straight up fucking Nazis.
Yeah. Like the hardest core Nazis possible. Like, yeah, dude. Like there was no no gray area. Like they were like literally like Hitler's right and left hand men for the most part, and like they contributed to so many deaths everywhere. Like, and they knowingly did it. But
Yeah.
there's a conundrum there, though. But that'll be for later. But
So now a lot of the science and stuff, and as we kind of talked about earlier, one of the things that I basically I alluded to in my paper was the accelerated science that they were able to gain came from their availability to human subjects. And when I talk about the availability to human subjects, that sounds very cold and very dark, and very unemotional. That's not even a fucking word. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It was the Jews. It was the Jews in the concentration camps.
Yeah, Jews, the Gypsies, the Poles, the Slavs, the Czechs. Anybody that wasn't considered the Aryan race or the part of the Overman principle.
Yeah. So and that principle was crazy to read as well, because Hitler put these guys in a class that is subhuman, not second-class citizen, legitimately subhuman. And they referred to the Jews and these guys in the concentration camps as I forget what they call it, like pigs, right?
Adult pigs.
Adult pigs, right? So in these documents that the Nazis are freaking writing back and forth to each other, which still exist, by the way, which is amazing. They refer to their experiments on adult pigs. And come to find out that they were not doing these experiments on animals.
Right.
They may have done one or two to start, but they definitely switched over into the animal or to the human realm once they had a plethora of subjects that didn't get to choose.
Yeah, one thing was interesting. I'm not sure how deep you want to get into it, but like the realization that in these papers that when they're doing the initial investigations that these adult pigs were actually the Jews and everyone in the concentration camps were actually people was one person doing the investigation saw some tubs where they're doing experiments on adult pigs, quote unquote. And he's like, wait a minute. He's like, these tubs are not big enough to host an adult pig. Like they're way too small. So there's no way an actual animal pig could have been here. And that's when the light bulb kind of went off. And he was like, okay, what else is going on? Like this, kind of putting these pieces together. And I was like, I thought that was like a cool part of her book that she wrote.
Yeah, and that's that incident where he came to the realization that that's where they were doing the. I'm not sure if it was the saltwater or the cold water tests.
I believe it was both.
Both?
Yeah.
It was crazy. So the book we're talking about this evening, for those of you who are watching, is it's called Operation Paperclip: The Secret Intelligence Program That Brought Nazi Scientists to America. Now, it sounds crazy. It sounds as though it could be a science fiction novel, but it's not. It's definitely much more of a it's a history book. But Annie Jacobsen is a phenomenal journalist. Her research is incredible. Her references, she has a plethora of primary source documents, and in the world of history, that's a super important thing, because if she's just citing work that other people wrote, then she's not really getting into the meat and potatoes, and she did her homework on this one.
Yeah, for sure. And like a lot of her, like you said, science fiction. There's at least like a few like key scenes like behind the scenes that like maybe not directly resulted to like the actual actions of Paperclip, but like behind the scenes in between that were like straight out of like a freaking like Hollywood movie.
Yeah,
Insanity. Like driving around Nazi prisoners, or I guess Nazi generals, for 3 hours in a circle, pretty much, with blinded windows to fool them, and drove them pretty much like 10 minutes down the road to house them in this house while they wired the whole entire house and like eavesdropped on all their conversations. And it wasn't until they shut down the program there to try to find out what these guys were actually up to that they drove 10 minutes back straight to where they originally were. And the guys were like, oh,
they were pissed.
We've been had. I was like, this is real life? Like, what is going on?
But they were able to point out in that house that they knew the house was bugged, so they weren't really doing it. So the whole thing ended up being for naught anyway.
Well, not necessarily, because so they did go out to outside near like the orchard or like the
tree, under the tree.
The tree over there, and they did converse, but I'm not really clear if it wasn't really clear if that place was bugged or not. I know outside somewhere was, but wasn't really clear if that was successful for getting information or not. I'm assuming not, since he closed it down.
Yeah, and a lot of this was happening in Dustbin, and as the army went through, there was a race. But before we get to that, I kind of we're jumping ahead of ourselves here.
Sorry.
No.
Yeah.
This is awesome. I want to go back to the human test subjects, because Germany had done this before. and it shouldn't surprise us that they did it again. However, the first time they did it was during World War One, and it was a Jewish scientist who went through and started doing work on blood types and finding blood types that were, A positive, all these other things like that, and using prisoners of war during World War One, drawing their blood and doing these tests and getting all these types of blood. Now, it ended up backfiring on him. He ended up actually in a prisoner camp in Poland later on. So this dude that was actually getting information for the German army, once Hitler took over, he had to go, and where a bunch of his scientist buddies left. This is out of an article. All the links and notes and all this stuff will be posted in the show notes, so you guys can go check these out on yourself. So the scientist's name is a Jewish scientist by the name of Ludwig Hertzfeld. Now, I take no responsibility for mispronounced names. I don't speak German. I don't speak Japanese. That'll come into play a little bit later.
Yeah, I second that.
Yeah, so I get a get out of jail free card for pronouncing these names terribly. So he took advantage of the Allied prisoners of the German army had taken during the war, and did extensive work with determining blood types and using them to identify desirable features for the purpose of eugenics. Eugenics is a big deal. It's where Hitler took off, and later, in about 10 years after this, and really started kind of working, getting the Aryan nation, as it were, rolling. Although working to determine race superiority, Hertzfeld was not immune from Hitler's anti-Semitic rage and found himself in the Warsaw ghettos during the Second World War, end quote. So yeah, so they had done this before. So, and here's where that move between the 20s and 30s, that's when the Nazis start taking over. Eugenics starts becoming a thing. They start culling the population. So if you have a deformity, if you are, if you can't read, and this weird self-reporting thing happens, where you can legit just call and say, "Hey, my neighbor's crazy,"
or like,
okay,
or like, "Hey, my neighbor has more than 10 people over his house. Should probably arrest him." Weird.
I'm gonna leave that one alone for now.
That's all I'm saying about it. That's it. Like, it's just weird.
I'm gonna leave that one alone. The only difference is out of all this comes there's the secret police, which eventually ends up being Heinrich Himmler's SS. So this is really the birth of the SS. Is these police, this Gestapo unit that kind of goes through and starts picking off all these people, and they start culling the herd and finding genetic superiority or working towards that, which is just fucking disgusting. Any way you look at it. And as this starts happening, right, so the Jews start becoming a target, that is where you see the exfil. Now, if you look at the amount of Pulitzer Prize winners, right, or Nobel Peace Prize winners for per capita per country, Germany still has the highest number. That's how many unbelievable scientists were coming out of Germany during this time of the between the 20s and the 40s. And why?
Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting question. But another thing to note on that Nobel Peace Prize, so during the later stages of World War II, scientists were still receiving or being recommended for these awards for the Nobel Peace Prize, and Hitler told his scientists to refuse these awards because they said they were Jewish awards and he should not accept them on behalf. It considered a disgrace, which is, it's crazy that you saying that they still have the highest amount out of any country still to this day. So it's interesting.
So there was a hard focus, and Hitler supported this, a hard focus on technical and scientific study. So anything that had to do with art, anything pretty or whimsical, right, got kind of shut off and pushed to the side. It wasn't funded. Nobody thought about it. It wasn't a thing. So all of this kind of builds that scientific repertoire. Now, the benefit of this with this mass exodus of scientists out of Germany did keep them, I believe, honestly, from obtaining the atomic bomb before we did.
Yeah, man. I was thinking about that too. Like, if this never happened, if he never had this conquest of just genetic superiority for his crazy ambitions, if he just, as a whole, just became a populous nation of everyone that's German right now, as a German citizen, we're going to take over the world, they probably could have. If they didn't expel all the Jews, that's where Albert Einstein came from, dude.
Yeah.
There's 100% chance that we'd be speaking German right now if that didn't happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and their military machine that they got rolling was crazy. And another thing, and we'll mention this here in a little bit too, is it was rolling until Berlin fell. Like it was like the Americans and the Russians were there. They were already there. These dudes were still working, and still, drinking the Kool-Aid that we can win if we just get this one thing figured out. We just get this one this one gas, this one bomb, this one thing figured out, and then we can turn the tide and we can still win. No, they're completely surrounded. There's no fucking way possible. All of their soldiers are captured or on the run. The only people that they have left are the scientists and the slaves. Like that's it. And how they kept going until the very end was phenomenal.
To like the very end too. Like it wasn't even like even while the Russians for the most part and the allies from the west and the Russians from the east, as they were closing in, like they were still like moving all their lab equipment to the west or in between somewhere so they can continue their research to try to find that one thing. I was just like, dude, that's insanity, man. Absolute insanity. Like you think like at some point you'd have like life preservation where you'd be like, dude, I'm out. And just like disappear or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
When like the actual curtain starts falling, it's like, all right, dude, this is like real. I'm out, kind of shit. But now they're hardcore ideologues till the very end.
Yeah, and the race to Berlin is credited with a lot of the reason for Paperclip, and because it seems as though we knew, although they were our ally, the Russia was definitely not our friend.
Yeah.
And their pursuit of science and scientists themselves for weaponization and all this other stuff was aggressive.
Right. I mean, if we didn't know that, then the very beginnings of Paperclip, in my opinion, was Starver going to the middle works. I'm sure we'll get into later, but him trying to get the V2 rocket blueprints and trying to round up scientists. If we didn't have the inclination that, hey, Russia is going to be our enemy soon, that would never happen. Right. It would have been like, oh, you got East, we got West, let's be buddies, but that never happened. Another thing we were complicit in that I thought was weird was FDR's vice president, Henry Wallace, during 1944, so right before the end of World War II. He actually visited Russia and visited like their actual gulags, which was pretty much their version of their concentration camps. And he publicly came out and said that there's nothing wrong with them. I don't know if that was just like a foreign domestic kind of way of keeping the peace between them, but like the Russians were doing equally as bad things over there. Not that we were absolved from guilt from our country, but we were nowhere near as bad as that.
Yeah, and although I think we did, the only difference is we did do tests, but we got roundabout consent, and I'm going to say roundabout consent because. Obviously not in the case of a lot of the MK Ultra stuff. There was zero consent there. They just drug the shit out of those people and watched people trip out on LSD for a while. But
and bang hookers.
But that's true. I guess if you're going to be a part of a scientific experiment, drugs and hookers might not be the worst thing. I don't know. There's some moral weird shit there, but I'm gonna let that be. So Russia actually ran its own paperclip, basically, and it was called, remember, I don't speak Russian, so don't get mad at me, guys, Operation Osoaviakhim, spelled Osoaviakhim. All right, so that's the Russians' version of paperclip, and it was the race to gain scientific superiority. And that's what led the country to make one of the most morally reprehensible decisions that would be acknowledged by a U.S. sitting president a few years later.
It wasn't well, I don't know. I guess that's like up to debate. I felt like Truman wasn't really in the loop for a long while, but he finally did come to terms with it and found out about it, supposedly. Like, who knows? He could have been complicit with it the whole time, and like they forged the records, or what do you want to call it? Like, there's a whole bunch of like ambiguity as far as like what actually happened, and you just have to like either be completely skeptical about it or take it at face value. So
Truman signed the paperwork. It was Truman's signature, and I have it here. I'll post the link.
Okay. Nice.
In the show notes. So you can see the actual document. We have the document in government archives.
Was that
where
for
he approved it. Now the language in this is where it gets super weird. Give me a second. I'll find it here. So this normally happens when we do podcasts, but I usually edit all this stuff out. You guys get to watch me look at the stuff that I did not get prepared for.
So I could break one thing while you're looking.
Yeah.
So you said that we, obviously MK Ultra, we had our experiments on people unwillingly and all that, but I want to say there was a part that Annie Jacobsen actually mentioned during the Nuremberg trials, where it leaked that we had done the same or similar experiments on our prisoners, but it just wasn't to the scale that the Nazis did. Like, I want to say it was like 800 to 1,000 prisoners.
Mm-hmm.
We were experimenting on, like, at some time during World War II, which I thought was, like, I was interesting. I'd never in million years would I thought that, initially, I never would have thought, like, we would have done that. I thought at least, like, up to Operation Paperclip, we had some kind of morals, but it's a lot of gray area right there.
And you find that gray area in science. And the president that actually talks about this program, I don't want to give it away, but the exceptions that are made to our value system, our morals, whatever that might be, come in the name of science, and they come in the name of safety. And that's not okay. You know what I mean? Like, there's bad shit there.
Whole lot of paranoia too.
And that is a slippery slope to once that snowball starts rolling, man, it's over.
Yeah. Well, I mean, like I said, it's still going on today. Like, it's not like they packed their bags. They're like, well, we're done doing shady stuff. Like, dude,
America found Jesus in 1975. And
right, exactly.
All's well.
Hey, we're done. Like,
right.
Clearly, it's still going on, but to what extent, who knows?
Right. So I have the memorandum up. It is by the acting Secretary of State to President Truman, presenting. So shortly after VE Day, operated, blah, blah, blah. I want to get to the. Okay, here we go. The War Department has operated a project known as Paperclip, under which selected German scientists have been brought to this country under military custody, short-term exploitation. There remains in our zones in Germany, blah, blah, blah. The statement provides for expanding Paperclip to include a total of between 800 and 1,000 specialists, since cooperation of the specialists is necessary for successful exploitation. Provisions made to bring members of the specialist's family. It is contemplated that at a later date, selected persons would be granted regular status under immigration law. So right up front, it says, hey, we're going to make them citizens, and not only bring them here, but we're also going to make them just regular Americans. All right. And then this statement is based on the Joint Chiefs of Staff and approved by the State, War, and Navy Departments. I recommend your approval. Signed by Dean Acheson. And then we go down. Top secret interim exploitation of German and Austrian specialists under Project Paperclip. Now, this is the actual memorandum here. So those were the recommendations by the Secretary of State. This is the actual memorandum that is signed by Truman. So it says the War Department will be responsible for moving the families of the specialists, the scientists, right? And then down here in the bottom, it says, persons proposed to be brought to the U.S. hereunder shall be screened by the commanding general of USAFET on a basis of available records. No person found by the commanding general to have been a member of the Nazi Party and more than a nominal participant in its activities or an active supporter of Nazism or militarism shall be brought to the U.S. hereunder. Thank you, bureaucracy, right?
Right.
There's so many holes in that, but it gets worse. He then goes on to say, and this is the president, this is Truman, right? He then writes, he doesn't write, somebody wrote it for him. However, neither position nor honors awarded a specialist under the Nazi regime solely on account of his scientific or technical ability will in themselves be considered sufficient to disqualify a specialist for evacuation to the U.S. hereunder. Where there is doubt as to qualification of a specialist under the preceding sentence, the commanding general may transport the specialist to the U.S., where further interrogation and screening shall be concluded. It's right there. And then it goes on to talk about bringing their families in through interrogation and all this other stuff. And anyway, so all this happens. A handwritten note on the side says, approved, signed by Harry S. Truman. From the fucking get-go, they knew that they were bringing over Nazis, and they wrote the policy so they could do it. Now, by this time, so Overcast, they were having these issues with Overcast before it became Paperclip.
Yes.
And they knew these dudes were bad.
Yeah,
and they needed the workaround.
And like the code name like Overcast only lasted so long, like it rapidly changed to Paperclip because it needed to speed up the process. But yeah, so I want to touch on that too. You mentioned like the beginnings of the actual term or like the group organization Operation Paperclip, and I thought it was funny that like it was literally just paperclips on these people's profiles of like their credentials. That's all it was, just a paperclip. But she also mentioned like the paperclip generally signified that these people were kind of dangerous to look out for them, but these were like the highest like quality scientists that the Nazi Party had developed. So even though like some people weren't privy to it at first, the people that actually like orchestrating all this, they designed that little like from the get-go, just like that little clever, inconspicuous, just like little paperclip that nobody might not even notice. Just couple paperclips here and there between thousands and thousands of papers, and like there's only a few people initially that knew what it actually meant until later. I thought that was kind of cool.
I wish I would have written down her quote because she put it so beautifully. Somehow it was like the paperclips indicated high risk but high not high reward. High information value or something like that. And how she wrote it was great.
Yeah.
And I don't remember how exactly how she put it, but it was pretty cool. But that paperclip was the indicator that these folks were potentially very dangerous, and that's so they knew that going into it. And to cover the whole program, honestly, this would be like a 5-part series and freaking 2 hours each. So we're kind of going to broad stroke a bunch of this. So as America and Russia kind of come in. And we start gathering things up. We start finding things. There's an apartment in France that gets raided, and in this they find a plethora. This is I think it's the JIOA at this time.
Was it Alsos?
Oh, it was Alsos. No, that's
yeah,
right.
Yeah.
So Alsos goes in, and they're in this apartment, and they find all of this crazy documentation, scientific projects in aviation, rockets, physics, and those kinds of things. And that kind of gets the ball rolling.
Right.
And now the reports start coming in from Germany, from our troops on the front line saying, hey, we found something. So there's that there. And it's called the Ozenberg list. Was the actual list where the Germans that were trying to destroy documents and get rid of stuff.
Yeah.
And so this dude, some private snuffy who, here come the United States soldiers. Hey, go destroy this box of papers. You can almost see the kid like, fuck. Right? So he runs to the bathroom, dumps the papers in the freaking toilet, stomps on him a couple times, tries to flush him down, and then bails.
Dude, how crazy is that, man? Like, that's how Operation Paperclip actually started, was just like this big-ass list of someone that tried to shove down a toilet.
Right.
And was just like, I gotta get out of here. Like, it's insane to think about, man. Like, science fiction, like I said, dude.
The list, right, this is a great novel,
right?
If it were fake. But this list, the Ozenberg list, is found in a toilet that wasn't properly flushed, and it has all of the names of these scientists that are involved in these projects. And the big project is the V2 rocket. And the V2 rocket is this crazy weapon system developed by a guy by the name of Werner von Braun, who we will talk pretty extensively about here in just a minute. So there we are. We're hunting these guys down. Now we're actually finding facilities. We're finding the people, and we're getting more information on how this whole thing goes. And at the same time, we know the Russians are coming, and they broke Germany up into a bunch of different zones. And actually, we were doing some of this research into the Russian zones, and we knew we had to get out of there, but we wanted to get this stuff first.
Well, another thing that was interesting was like you got like a lot of all this going on. You had a lot of independent actors that weren't necessarily like working for, like they're employed by the government or the army or the military in some way, shape, or form, but they had their own ulterior motives, and they started like forming coalitions. And at the same time, like you had all these countries. You had France. You had primarily like Britain. Like they were also interested in their own motives for these scientists as well. So it wasn't just like us versus the Russians. Like it was everybody was a free for all. Like who's going to get this information and how are they going to use it?
Yeah, and the Russians were actually able to get quite a bit of stuff.
Yeah,
and beat us to the punch on a couple of things, particularly in some of the toxic gas weapons and those kinds of things.
Also, space exploration as well. They beat us to that as well.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that is true, and that was really the push. So,
Yeah.
but before we get into all that, and we are going to get into all of that, we're going to take a quick break. We're going to do a little sponsorship thing, and then we will be right back to talk about some other stuff. We will see you in just a minute. Okay, we're back. I'm talking with Jesse. We are also currently live for the first time ever. We are talking about Operation Paperclip. One of the big references we are using is a book written by Annie Jacobson. We kind of talked about a rough overview of what the program was, how it got started, when it got started, and now we're going to talk about some of the weird stuff and some of the people. But before we get there, our glasses are empty. So it is time for number 2. Now, number 2, in honor of our World War II kind of theme here, we are going to be going to a distillery. Shout out to Jesse's got the Scotch Trooper glass.
Pretty cool.
Scotch Trooper lost his battle with cancer here not too long ago. Rest in peace, my friend, and our thoughts go out to your family. His GoFundMe page is still up. I will put a link to that in the show notes as well, so you can give to them as they recover their loss of their husband and father. So, badass guy.
Right on.
Super
Yeah, I'm not
cool.
familiar with him at all, but it's cool.
It's on Instagram. Amazing stuff there. So anyway, we're going to Japan. We're going to drink some Japanese whiskey here. Very similar to Scotch, actually. The guy who made this went back to Scotland to learn how to make whiskey and came back and started making whiskey in Japan for the very first time. Very cool story. Link to the Nika distillery in the website so you guys can read it. It's a crazy long history. I don't want to go through all of it. Super cool. The first coffee still, or what we know as a column still, got delivered to Japan in 1963. So the very first Nika whiskey got launched in 1940, and then something happened between 1940 and 1949, and there was nothing that happened kind of in the same timeline that we're talking about. And then in the 50s, it starts blowing up again. So this is Nika from the barrel, proofed out at, says 51.4, but proofing in other countries is a little different than what we proof here. So
Really?
I'm not really sure what this is. It's probably...
This is your first time trying this?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Just opening it up. I've heard a lot of very good things about this. I hope it's all right.
Smells a little stronger. I don't know if it's going to be as spicy, though.
I don't think it's going to be as spicy. I think... So there definitely is more... There's more punch there behind it, but that kind of rounds it out, though. So much cleaner.
Oh, man. Phew.
That's good. Oh, that's so good. So it's definitely, I mean, I think it's a single malt. I'm not sure if it's
Ooh, man.
little warm.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh.
So somewhere, somebody just watched you do a shot of Nika from the barrel and passed out and went, "Oh my God, no!" This is fantastic. So this is like, it has almost that like grain floor kind of smell to it. And I mean, I grew up on a farm working in a Beals feed store, and like that. A lot of times I associate that smell with like like so when I smell stuff like it's a good smell, kind of like syrupy.
I only associate like one smell with a farm, and it's not Scotch. So I don't know.
To some people, it might be Scotch. That has just an incredible texture, just silky smooth and soft in your palate. Not a lot of too much heat. I mean, I know you experienced heat, but
Well, no, it dissipated like really quickly too,
Yeah.
and then it almost like the heat went like both directions this way, and kind of like fizzled out. I was like, what is going on, dude? That was
yeah,
cool.
a short finish, great flavor. Oh, that's good whiskey. Oh, I like that stuff. So let me get you just some quick technical specs here, if I could, before we move on. All right, it is a blended whiskey, which was initially released in 1985. The development of this expression started with an aim to deliver full flavors and richness of whiskey, like from the barrel, which only blenders can sniff and taste. The secret behind the gorgeous flavor is the unique combination of complex blending, higher ABV, and the marriage process. I'm not sure what the marriage process is. If anybody knows, please let me know so we can learn together. All right, so there we are. Now here we go. Let's talk about some weird stuff, because there's a bunch of really fucking weird stuff in Operation Paperclip. And let's talk about one thing that you brought to my attention that I had to do a little digging on, right? Space.
Yep.
And not just space, not us getting to space, although manned spaceflight was a very strong focus in German science. But visitors from space was actually something kind of connected here. So
Yeah.
share with me the bell-shaped UFO.
I'll let you take it. Go ahead. Like I'm not well versed on it. If you looked up way more stuff on it, it was just initial like kind of bring to your attention on it. I was like, it was kind of weird, where there's a conspiracy theory that UFOs had landed in Germany during World War II, and that's pretty much where they got their blueprints and their technology from, as far as to just take off as far as in the field of science. And like obviously like it's all hearsay and there's no real proof about it, but it's fun to think about.
It is, and that actually what in my reading, kind of what it says almost exactly is that it wasn't really quite a thing. It's a lot of theory and stuff like that. But something that kind of backs up that theory, which I found to be interesting, was Major Robert Staver, doing research for the V2 rocket, comes in contact with Walter Rydell. Now, he was the V2 motor structure and design chief. In an interview with Rydell, Staver says that Rydell is obsessed with manned spaceflight and space mirrors. Okay. So Staver would initially only want to interrogate and glean info, but after the Ozenberg list came out, it became a little bit more important. So right there is space flight. Manned space flight is, and this is in 45.
Yeah, I want to say von Braun also like reminisced and also at least like publicly like dreamt about going to space as well all the way back then. Like that was like his ultimate goal. As far as like scientific selfish needs. Obviously he did other horrible things to get there, but
Right.
I think that's like was his ultimate motive for his direction and like where he went.
Yeah. Well, the V2 rocket, I mean, that was its thing. Like, it went into the atmosphere and then
Yeah.
it came down with some relatively good success.
Oh, and like you mentioned at the very beginning, like 25 years ahead of every other nation in the world. How does that happen? And it's like the V2 rocket, nobody had technology or weapon even like remotely close to that. You know what I mean? It's like, where does it come from? Like, I don't know. I mean, like, so you can speculate all day, but
Yeah.
who really knows what the real story is?
It makes you wonder, like, if they actually, like, if there was a connection to, all of that kind of adds in, like, it just fuels the fire of this could be potentially something
Yeah.
that was a thing. And to be honest with you, I would be happy to find out that it's true, because I feel as though the United States is an unnecessary magnet for visits from our friends in space. Shout out to John over at Connect the Dots. I'm sure you're tickled pink with me admitting that there might be people or things in outer space. The dude loves aliens.
Dude, how can there not be?
I think we'll find out for real here very soon.
Everything's it's gonna be like, all right, we declassified it, but we redacted 99% of this. The and. It's like, learned so much, dude. Like, June 1st, that's how it's gonna be.
I agree with you. I'm in a different theory though, because I don't necessarily think, although they may have come from space initially, I think they're here on Earth. I think they've been here for a while. I think they're hanging out in our oceans.
Yeah, no, that's like a gaining popular theory, especially from last year, or was it 2019? I think it was 2019. The Navy just released like photos and videos of like these Tic Tac space or shaped UFOs flying around one of our destroyers out in the Pacific Ocean. And like that's all. It's just like kind of like you'll see like a 5-minute like YouTube video clip of it, but there's no actual like concrete information on what the heck these are. But these Tic Tac like shaped like UFOs would dive into the water and come back up. And some of them actually weren't just Tic Tac; they're also pyramid shaped as well.
Yeah.
And it was just like that's a good theory. Like, dude, there's no way like we're gonna be able to actually like investigate the very depths of the ocean. That maybe in like 2,000 years, or who knows?
Right.
But it's like we're nowhere near like getting close to the bottom of the ocean.
Which is nuts, because now we're looking at space, and even in 1945, we're looking to the stars when we have not explored the corners and bowels of our very own planet. Everything that's sitting right here beneath our feet.
Yeah.
We have so much of this place that we have no idea what's there. There was also an interesting note that there was a trip to Antarctica by the Germans, and there was again some weird connection stuff, all theory, not hardcore facts with evidence or anything that I can stand on firmly and say this happened when. But again, Antarctica is another one. I think is a spot where, although it's tragic that the polar ice caps are melting, I think once the water dissipates a little bit, we're going to find some stuff that may change what we know about us as humans, and maybe some visitors there. But again, we'll have John on, and he can talk aliens with us here at some point in time.
So quickly, I'll bring up like the reason why I shot that to you. I think it was last week.
Yeah.
Like I said, I'm not super deep into it. I didn't like really get into too much, but like that was like the first time I ever heard the terminology or like the actual Operation Paperclip. I was watching the History Channel, and I was watching that for that dude with the crazy ass hair. That's a meme now, and he's just like looks like he's like completely stoned out of his mind.
Aliens, bro.
Aliens, bro. I love that guy and the whole entire show. Like he made that show, but like. I was like, Operation Paperclip, talking about Nazis, this and that, and like I was like, what? And like talked about NASA. I was like, dude, it blew my mind. Like, and this this is recent stuff that I just learned about in like I think it was like 2011, 2012, or whenever.
Yeah, and a lot of it's real new. A lot of it's still classified, which we'll talk about that here in just a minute. So we're talking a lot about space. We're talking a lot about rockets and weapons. Another type of weapon that came about was chemical weapons. Now, something really interesting with Hitler is that he was the victim of a chemical weapon during World War I.
Yep.
And it fucked him up. So Hitler never developed a weapon system unless he had a way to defend him and the Nazis against it. They referred to that as the sword and the shield.
Yes.
Right? So for every weapon that they would make a defense for that weapon.
Yep. Because
they figured, hey, if we could defend it, we're good.
Yep.
And so it was kind of interesting to see the development of these chemical weapons, but I think there was a hesitation on his part, and this is just me kind of looking over all the information I have available to me. He didn't want to use it.
Yeah, it's very possible. Like his PTSD from, was it mustard gas?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, yeah, it's a very, like nobody knows for sure why.
Yep.
But I think I was talking to our coworker the other day about how lucky we are as a species that he didn't use these chemical weapons against the Allies in a last-ditch effort within the last couple months. Like, they had the means to just annihilate everything for the most part. I mean, aside from the atomic bomb, but, like, even more horrifically, just the slow, agonizing death of these chemical weapons. Like, he had enough to, like, wipe out pretty much the entire planet. I think they said, like, they had about 27,000 metric tons of weapons with the heads actually like fused with these chemical weapons. And I was like, dude, that's a shit ton of weapons, man. That's a lot.
Yeah, and so we're going to talk about a specific gas here in just a sec, but they had weaponized things like botulism, hoof and mouth disease. They had figured out chemicals to attack livestock and plants and all this other stuff.
Rhizome pest.
Yeah, so they were going to go not only just after people, but they were going to infect the people of these other countries from the ground up.
Yeah.
And that's that's a scary thought by itself, and we played with that. The United States played with that. They went up to Alaska and dumped some spores. And over the course, and this came out of Fort Dix, and this is actually something I think, I probably have it in my notes here. One of the top Nazi scientists that they brought over from IG Farben was the freaking this dude that ran this test, and they found these spores after they dumped them in Alaska. Something that resembled anthrax, right? It wasn't anthrax; it was similar to, but they found these spores or traces of these spores in the lower 48 months later, from Alaska down to the lower 48 in a matter of months.
Right, which like obviously alludes to Russia being over there.
Well, no. So we did the test in Alaska.
Oh, we did it.
We did it.
Oh, sorry.
The whole purpose of the test was to see how fast it spread. So within a matter of months, they dumped a bunch of stuff in the tundra in Alaska, and these spores made its way down. Now, I'm sure the jet stream has something to do with that.
Right.
But what's
I
crazy?
didn't pick up on that at all.
Yeah.
All right, wow.
Yeah. Which is nuts. And remember, we're behind the Germans. So if we're doing that with the German, they're probably beyond where we're at. So one of the gases that struck me the most as being kind of scary was Tayboon. Right. And so last time Jesse was here, he crafted us some wonderful hats to keep us safe. This time he has brought us a bottle of.
Well, it's a flask.
Well, it's a beaker, actually. A beaker of probably not Tayboon. I don't even know what that is.
It's pretty much Jeff Bezos' agent came by, dropped it off. He said it was Chemical Works number 92. And I was like, you sure it's not 91? And he was like, yeah, no, it's 92. So I was like, all right, I got you. So I trust him.
Right on. So this Tayboon gas, it's created by a guy by the name of, this is where in the audio one we pause, or we cut out my...
Schrader?
Yeah, Schrader. There we go.
Yep.
Jesus Christ. I've got his name. There we go. Gerard Schrader. Oh, my God. I should read my own notes. So Gerard Schrader, this is in 1936. So he is working on a chemical to kill leaf lice. And he mixes together this compound, and all of the lice die instantly. Immediately. 100%. Completely killed. So he's like, I've got something here.
Yep.
And he hands it over to his boss. And his boss looks at it and goes, holy shit. So they grab a monkey.
Yeah.
And that monkey lasts a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
And it's not injected into the monkey. It's aerosoled into a cage that the monkey is in.
Yeah, just
and the monkey
spray.
is dead. So then they grab a chimpanzee, human-size element. And I think it was 16 minutes.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, pretty close to it. Yeah.
This thing is dead.
Yeah.
This guy has created a chemical that will kill you in moments. And that's in an aerosol if you're breathing it. So if you get it on your skin, if it gets injected into you, it's even that much faster. He actually, Schrader got, not Schrader. It was Schrader. Schrader got sick right before he came up with the final chemical compound of this, where he almost died.
Yeah, he had to pull over, go to the hospital.
Go to the hospital, was down for like 3 weeks.
Yeah, man.
And then went back to work.
It was like, damn, I got something. Like, what?
Yeah, I sneezed weird, and next thing I know, I'm in the hospital about to die from chemical exposure.
I guess he thought maybe it was COVID or something like that.
Yeah. Who knew? He couldn't taste or smell anything ever again. But it was just Tayboon gas. Don't worry, it wasn't COVID.
Way more deadly, man. COVID, man, can't.
Way more deadly. Jesus, I tell you what. But Tayboon was scary. So they find Tayboon, and Tayboon was actually one of the things that the Russians got a hold of. And they of the vats and the facility that made it, they got to that first, and they were able to pull that back and get that going. And they eventually ditched Tayboon because it was not as stable as sarin gas. And sarin gas is very interesting. The A in sarin, which just stands for a guy we're going to be talking about by the last name of Ambrose.
Yep.
Super fucking bad guy.
And the S is for Schrader, because he was also part of it as
Oh,
well.
yeah.
Yeah, like the whole entire like SAREN is an acronym for all the scientists that designed it, which I had no idea about that either before I read this. I was like, I just thought it was just some random word they made up once again to define something, but no, it was like for every scientist that contributed to the design of the actual sarin gas, like it was used as an acronym. I thought that was amazing, or like just interesting.
And it was unstable, and it was unknown too, and that was kind of scary. So when the U.S. forces get to this facility in the mountains, and they open up this barn door, and here's these thousands of rounds that are marked with, I think it was yellow paint. There were other markers that they knew, like green was, this gas, and blue was this, or red was this.
Yeah, I just remember Taboon was 3 small green circles.
Green circles, that's right. It was green. Sorry. Yep. And so they didn't know what the markings were. So here they are. They've got this stuff, and they're trying to get it figured out, and ends up going back to the States, and they end up bringing one of the Nazis back to the States to kind of figure it out. But the Russians ditched this eventually and went to the sarin process and started getting that afterwards. So the chemical company IG Farben was the leading manufacturer of chemical weapons and worked directly with and for the Nazis to create chemical weapons. Now, this company still exists today.
Really?
They exist in, subsidiaries, I guess would be the right word, of this company still exist.
Okay.
So there are
Did they rename themselves to
connections.
something else?
Yeah, yes, they did.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so they are. Let's pull this up here real quick so I don't. BASF, Bayer, and then AGFA. So a lot of those are familiar. Bayer, I guess, would be the most common because of the aspirin. But yeah, so those are some of the offshoots of this company. This company got taken over by the Nazis and became the chemical and biological test and development, and it encompassed the area of Auschwitz. So Auschwitz, that, and I guess Dora was more of a slave labor camp, but there were still tests that happened at Dora, but the chemical tests, the really gross shit that you hear about from these the concentration camps, generally gets attached to the people from this particular company and some of the stuff that they were testing, and then of course the gas chambers themselves were,
So she brought that up in her book where she said, so going back to Hitler not wanting to use chemical weapons for some kind of like PTSD or some kind of moral dilemma that he had, presumably, or who knows. But that brings back to he didn't have a problem with using Zyklon B and other, I think, like, I'm not sure what else were in the gas chambers, but I know for sure Zyklon B was, but just killing massive amounts of Jews and Gypsies and Poles and all of them. So that's what it was kind of conflicting as far as that standpoint. If that's the route you're going to go, is be like, well, that's why he Taboon and sarin gas and just wiping out the entire Earth's population. He didn't have a problem dealing with the Jews.
But I think that may have been because he didn't view the United States, the soldiers, as pigs. He viewed those were people. And he didn't want to use those weapons against people, but he didn't have any drama with using them against subhuman species that he determined to be less than, and it's totally fucked up.
Yep.
Huge fucked up. So there's the gas part of it. IG Farben is kind of the company that gets that, and there's a lot of folks that we're going to be talking about here next that kind of originate from there and have their connections to those. So let's work our way into the cast now. So we mentioned him. Let's talk about Otto Ambros. So he is the Nazi bad guy. Headed up the Farben projects at Auschwitz and Dunfermline. Discovered sarin gas. He was put in charge of the chemical plant in Auschwitz. Made synthetic rubber for Hitler, actually. So that's where he was such a valuable asset to Hitler, because tires, all these other things. So
tank treads.
Yep. So he figured out a way to make synthetic rubber and make that a thing.
Yeah, and actually Hitler awarded him with 1 million Reichmarks or whatever the currency is over there, which is equivalent to probably I don't know, $500 million. It's pretty much you're set for life, dude. Thanks. We started this war with every nation around us, so we have to be independent of our own. And you've now made this war machine able to be independent with this rubber synthetic that you just designed. So yeah.
And we tried to employ him. Couldn't get past the.
So I don't know if you want to get into that story. Like that's a long story, but I think that was one of the craziest part of the book too. Like science fiction.
Yeah.
With him and what is it? Major Tilly and Colonel Tarr.
Yep.
And especially Colonel Tarr, how he treated Ambrose, and the whole entire escapade that happened right after that, with Ambrose fleeing, going to France, doing this and that. Like, dude, it's one of the most surreal stories I've ever read. I'm like, that really happened again. Like,
And then he
super-
flips on him, like, or he double agents, not double agents. What's the word I wanted?
like double cross.
Well, yeah. So like they case him, right, and they think they've got him. They think they're gonna like cut him off and go get him. And then all of a sudden, this dude walks in who's like same shape and size. And he's like, "Not me."
He's like,
"Yeah,
yeah, man. Like that shit was nuts, man. And like I said, he was hanging out in France, which was like neutral territory, and he'd come back and forth. But like he had so many informants around Germany, around the area, that he could literally travel freely for like at least a year or two. I forget how long it was. But he could like move freely. He had so much power and influence in that country still after the war was over that he was larger than fucking life, man.
And he was the one that got his money back.
Yes, yeah.
At the end, which was crazy.
The
so
US gave it back to him.
They gave it back to him, which is unfucking believable. All right, so there's Otto Ambrose. Let's talk about Walter Schreiber. So Walter Schreiber, I think, is the most interesting one out of everything. So he is the Surgeon General for the Third Reich. He super Nazi, right? He's not just a Nazi. He's a gold badge wearer. He's like Hitler's dude. Right,
and then that's just like you said, his right hand man.
Yeah. So here is that was really, I mean, Speer I guess would be his right hand man, but like
as far as like the chemistry or science,
right? The science side of it, yeah. So here's Walter Schreiber. Now he gets picked up by the Russians. The Russians take him.
Another crazy
and then,
story, man.
Right. So the Russians get him, and so now we're at the Nuremberg trials. The Russians bring him back.
Yeah.
As a witness.
Yeah.
And he tags a whole bunch of dudes.
He's just snitching, man.
Yeah. So tags a bunch of dudes, and then all of a sudden, one of the lawyers for the U.S., Walter?
I think it was Alexander.
That's right, yeah. So Alexander catches him in a lie.
Yeah.
And then just puts him right out on Front Street. And I'm like, nope, you're lying. Here's how we know this. Da-da-da.
Yeah.
Totally describes it. So Russia's like, the U.S. like leaned over to Russia, was like, hey, can we have him?
And Russia's like,
I was like,
no, we're taking him away.
No. So yeah, so oh boy, they take him and they leave, and so he just avoids getting anything.
Yeah, no.
And next thing you know, a year or two later, he comes stumbling across the fence into frickin' West Germany, going, "Hey, I escaped."
Yeah.
Bullshit. You escaped.
Yeah, exactly. From another thing too, the Russians they promoted him to a general status.
A general. Yes.
He was a military general. Like, dude, like this guy is insane.
Yeah. So, and not only that, so his story is total bullshit.
Yeah.
It's absolutely nuts. How and the story of how he escaped that he's giving to folks is unbelievable. And as I'm reading this story, I'm like, there's no fucking way. Like, there's no way we believed this, right? And the fledgling CIA is now involved at this point. And the first thing that they do, they put him to work at a CIA safe house in Germany as the facility's, surgeon or chief medical officer, whatever.
Yeah.
So right off the get-go, we employ him, we put him to work.
I want to say that was that Fort King or something like that? Something King, I think that's where he was working, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know.
I can tell you in just a moment.
Schreiber, like his story was just like, he's like, I ran away, I got on a train, and now I'm here. And he mentioned something else about like going to the dry cleaners and dropping something off the dry cleaners, and that's how like he was able to like get away from like being recognized or some shit. Like it was like the most absurd story ever, man.
and we bought it. So although I don't think we really bought it,
no.
I think it was Camp King.
Okay.
So
Camp King, okay.
I think they believed that he had enough to give to where they really honestly they were able to just say, fuck it, we don't care about the story.
Just placated him.
You're here now. Ends up being like because he was like, I think he was selling weapons.
Yeah, man.
So he was doing some bad shit. Now
yeah,
so he's got this crazy escape story. We put him to work, and then eventually he does come to the United States. the Surgeon General of the Third Reich, gets brought to the United States and given a job with the Defense Department in Texas, alongside von Braun, who we'll talk about, and some other folks. So he's given and his family is brought here. Now, his one daughter moves to, I think it's Argentina, somewhere in South America.
Yeah,
but the rest of his family, like his wife and his mother, are here in the United States, in Texas. Bought a house.
Yeah.
Like, they're here. And until there's some drama, somebody outs him. And somebody outs him hard and says, hey, this is the guy. It was Alexander.
Yes. Yep.
Brought to the States one of the patients that they were going to fix her legs.
Yes.
Right. So
yeah, they had broken her legs and done experiments on her with like typhoid or typhoid fever or something. Yeah.
No. That's a different story.
That's a different story.
Yeah,
okay.
totally different story. Sorry. But it was Alexander, because Schreiber wrote an article, and
it was actually in the Boston Globe as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Alexander was like, oh hell no, because he knew the guy. So and a lot with Alexander, the cool thing was he grew up in Austria, and was in class with a lot of the same scientists that are now Nazis.
Yep.
Right. So, and that's why he was kind of put in the lead of the prosecution at the doctor's trials for Nuremberg.
Yeah, it's like if you don't believe in fate, like I would just read Alexander's story and be like, dude, he was just absolutely everywhere at the right place at the right time. Literally left Germany right before the Third Reich took over, or Nazi Germany took over. Was in Beijing, I think, or Hong Kong. He was in China somewhere teaching German over there. And while he was teaching, within like a year or two, that's whenever Nazi Germany took over and they started exterminating Jews. And he was talking to his colleagues back at home, and they're like, dude, do not come back here.
Don't come home.
And he was like, dude, it's my home. And they're like, dude, if you come back here, you're an idiot. So that's when he flew to America, got involved with the army here and all that. And his story is cool as hell, too.
Yeah. And so he's the one that outs him, and then all of a sudden it becomes a thing. And folks start calling, Schreiber up, and they're like, hey, dude, are you a bad guy? To which he's like, no.
Yeah,
you're a bad guy.
Yeah, he's like, your mom's a bad guy.
So, to the point where he bails. So they were about to kick him out of the country. They were about to, shut him down, basically turn on him, the asset that they brought over. But he bails to Argentina. And
well, even before that, he went to California because his
San Francisco.
Yeah. Whenever they stayed with, I think it was his son, was it? I think it was like his son and his wife or something like that. But it's like he had family over in California that wasn't with him. And the Air Force is like, dude, you need to come with us. You're not here anymore. He's like, nah, I'm still staying here. He went to California, stayed there, and then Air Force went to him and like, dude, you gotta leave. And he's like, well, you need to pay for my flight then. And like the Air Force is like, all right, we'll pay for your flight over to Argentina, and you're good to go. Weird stuff.
His story, honestly. So there were two moments while I was reading this book where I legit shut the book and had to walk away.
Really? I think I remember.
Totally emotionally compromised, and how mad. And that was one of the moments where, and I remember reading this and I got mad at Annie for writing this book, because like, surely they're not. And she leads these little breadcrumbs like, but maybe he would work for us eventually. I'm like, no fucking way. It's not possible. It's not fucking possible. And then sure shit, motherfuckers in Texas. And I'm like, getting paid from the same pot of money that I'm getting paid for right now. But way more. I mean,
yeah, no, they weren't paid like I said, minuscule amounts. Like they were handsomely paid, especially for the time. Like $200,000-$300,000 a year. They were paid to like lecture and design stuff for the U.S., which is equivalent to who knows how many millions of dollars. You know what I mean? Like these are Nazis that literally exterminated like millions of people.
By his hand. Like that's what's crazy. It's like that he. First off, the fact that had he been at the trials, had he been at the doctor trials in Nuremberg, he would be dead right now. Or, well, I mean, he's dead now anyway. But he would have been dead then.
Well, presumably, because there were people that did equal amount of atrocities as him that did get off because they were scientists. I know she wrote something to akin of, if you're a scientist in the Nazi regime developing and exterminating people, you're pretty much left off the hook for the most part, not executed. But if you're any part of the military, you weren't a scientist, you weren't valuable to the United States government or the Russian government, then you're literally executed right then and there.
Yeah, and So your value to the United States freaking made you decided whether or not you're going to get executed or not, which is craziness.
Yeah.
Just to even say those words.
Total compromise of like morality.
Morality. Yeah, I know. 100%. And so another person, so somebody that fell victim to that was Kurt Blome. So Bloma, excuse me. So Bloma, right, was Hitler's bioweapon maker. Quote, by the end of the war, he was in charge of the vast research program that included physiology, biology, bacteriology, vaccines, radiology, pharmacology, cancer statistics, and tumor farming departments. Taps is playing. Various charges received at least 2.7 million Reichmarks in funding from the Weitbark and SS between 1943 and 1945. He used concentration camp prisoners for experimentation on orders of Heinrich Himmler, super bad guy who killed himself, the only person who died honorably in this whole mix. He sought after immediately. He was sought after he got out of prison. After he got out of prison. For fucking war crimes, right? He was sought by us, the United States, after he got out of prison for war crimes. Okay,
yeah,
I got to move on because I'm going to start stuttering here.
We got him out of prison.
Yeah. We got but his past was too dark, and he posed too great of a risk to bring to the United States. So the guy who was under fucking Walter Schreiber was too much of a risk because he had been found guilty.
So I want to say, actually, you said his name is Blomey?
Blomey. So Kurt Blomey.
Kurt Blomey, yeah.
So it's written Blome, but...
Yeah, that's how I read it in my head when I was reading it. But, like, so him and Schreiber, at least one section of the book, I know she wrote that, like, they're pretty much equals underneath, like, as far as Hitler's chemists, as far as, like, the rank structure and, like, chain of command and all that within like, they're equals. And because of that, they were, like, bitter fucking rivals, too.
Well, one was the sword, one was the shield.
Right.
Yeah.
As far as vaccines and or developing the actual virus itself.
Right. Yeah. The I believe that's how he was referred to in the book. Was he was the shield to Schreiber's sword.
Yep.
And so we still put him to work though. So he at Camp King actually there was a new vacancy.
Yeah, weird.
They needed a medical officer.
Yeah, Schreiber just ended up.
So
yeah,
but with Bloma though they fucked him.
Yeah,
which I'm not sad about or upset about. Like hey, karma's a bitch, right? So they promised him a contract. They promised him a bunch of stuff. They were going to take him to the States. Sold his house, got his family all together, got everything ready, and all of a sudden the United States was like, no, not this guy. He's too much of a bad guy to bring over.
Unless I'm misremembering, I want to say that actually she wrote in there that like when they were trying to get his visa, like passport, certified or approved, like everybody else from Operation Paperclip to bring over here and the families and all that, they fucked up his paperwork by like usually like hey, there's like one section of paper was like, hey, is this dude a Nazi? And like generally everybody across the board was like, nah, he's not a Nazi, but clearly they were, but like on paper like they weren't, right? But with Blomey, they forgot to like put that he wasn't a Nazi. They left it blank, or they put like something like that wasn't what they were supposed to put.
It was a statement. It was a statement like with information available to us, no connection is known. But I mean, legit, the dude got tried by U.S. freaking judges, and like, I mean, so it was an omission of, anyway, so he gets shut off. So now, like, his bags are packed, his house is sold, his wife is there, he's ready to go, and they're like, well, shit, sorry, we can't hire you, but we can definitely put you to work. We have a new job opening over at Camp King to be the surgeon.
And he wasn't told why there was an opening either.
No, not at all. Because I think had he been told that, he would have fired off some.
Yeah, he would have felt offended for sure.
Yeah, 100%. And so he does. He goes, but his wife is pissed.
Yeah,
she doesn't go with him.
No, she divorced
him.
She
done. Yeah, it's just like fuck you. I'm out. I don't get to see Times Square. I'm leaving.
It's like you can murder millions of people, but moving to a military base not happening on my watch.
Not my watch. Yeah.
What? How is that the straw that broke the camel's back? I don't know.
So apparently, like they were in a. I'm really unfamiliar with the countrysides of Germany, but they were in. I want to say it was Bavaria, and Camp King was in Frankfurt, in not a pretty area. So it would have been a step down for them. But he still got paid by the United States to be a medical officer for the U.S. in a top secret friggin' CIA hide site in Germany, which was unbelievable. So the next two folks we're going to talk about are Arthur Rudolph and Werner von Braun. So von Braun is the name that is most associated or easily good whiskey.
Ish.
Yeah, eventually we'll get there. More easily associated with Paperclip because his face was everywhere.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy was on fucking Disney
Yeah.
talking about the space program.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, yeah.
So he designed the V2 rockets, which killed thousands of people.
Yeah. Including like mostly in Britain.
Yep.
Yeah.
And built these rockets using slave labor, which we're going to go into some detail about because that's kind of an important part because he still holds a position of reverence to this day in the United States, despite this. Now, this is all new, right? Newer. So I believe her name was Jennifer Hunt. 1985 was the first one to blow the lid off the whole thing and say, hey, this happened, and here's my evidence. And everybody kind of went like, oh, shit. And she was a reporter for CNN.
Yeah, like going back to like my first, like a while ago, I was saying like Paperclip was like the general public, as far as like she wrote, like they knew about it, but it just like I said, just left the stream of consciousness from like the American public. It wasn't until 1985 that like it resurfaced and people were like, huh, what? That happened?
So the project almost got blown to pieces in 46 and then again in 48, allegedly by the Russians. You know, wrote snuck a little freaking, hey, check out these guys in Ohio, you know, and gave it to a reporter. And the reporter does what reporters do and does some homework and goes, oh, shit.
Well, what reporters used to do.
These are Nazis. Yeah, that's true. Although if that happened, if a note got slid to a reporter today from Russia,
they just blame Trump for it, so it doesn't matter. Like, it's still
there were
Trump's
so many roads that my brain was going down at the same time. I couldn't pick a good one.
No, at the end of the day, if you just blame Trump, then you're good.
Right, as long as it doesn't end up on a laptop that you give to somebody to fix, you're good to go. Or are you? Weird. So focus.
Parmesan cheese.
Yeah, Parmesan cheese. There we go. So 46 and 48, like it to the point where they had to do damage control, and they had to do some pretty subversive movements to get the cap back on the program so they didn't lose the momentum. And there were a lot of folks in the U.S. asking the question, like, are these Nazis? Are these really Nazis? And we did the whole, you know, Jedi mind trick. Fucking Yoda comes out and goes, these are not the Nazis you're looking for.
Yeah, dude, like, what?
And everybody's like, oh.
They're not.
Until Jen Hunt, I want to call her Jen Hunt, but it's not Linda. So Linda Hunt comes out in 1985 and says, no, these were the Nazis that we're looking for, and here's who they are. But one of the two folks, specifically in the rocket realm, was Arthur. And Arthur Rudolph, known as the father of the Saturn rocket, got us to the moon, but was asked to renounce his citizenship after his connection to Middlework, which was the rocket building facility, which we're going to talk about here, was made after 38 years of living in and working for the United States. He had to bounce. You got to go. So 40 years the dude is working with us. The lid gets blown off the program, and he's the sacrificial lamb. Sorry, boss. You got to roll.
Yeah.
That's horseshit.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like there's always got to be a sacrificial lamb at some point to appease the mob, right? It's got to be somebody.
Yes, I would agree with that. So it's to save the, you know, the, well, shit, that's some Star Trek shit right there. You know, Spock, the good of the many outweighs the good of the one. So if you can keep the program intact by freaking tossing this dude off the bridge, well, bye, Felicia.
Yeah, exactly.
Here you go.
I'll say I don't believe with that ideology or like that statement, but at the end of the day, that's generally how the world works and how it's been working, at least like for as long as I can tell. Like it always goes down that route. There's always a scapegoat one way or another.
So von Braun specifically, we're gonna go move into him now and probably be here for a little bit because of how public his work was. He got us to space.
Yeah.
You know, NASA exists because of this guy.
He was head of NASA. Like, he pretty much created NASA, man.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And apparently a bunch of his shit's still buried in the desert just outside of Yuma. Apparently you can if you can get the permit, you can go look for it. There's a whole bunch of like V2 rocket parts and pieces that are just buried out there. So, but this guy gets pulled in and put to work for weapons and space, basically. So, excuse me. So, but knowing, maybe not necessarily knowing, assuming that he had all of the stuff that he built was in the middle work facility.
Yeah.
Which was near the Dora concentration camp. And Dora was actually the one that fueled or pushed all the slave labor. Slave labor being, Jews, the folks that from Poland and all this stuff. So primarily Jews. So, and what's crazy is that von Braun would buy the slaves
From the SS.
Yeah. So here's a government-funded program by the Nazis to build rockets, paying
They're just paying themselves.
the police.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's some crazy weird corruption shit, but I mean they're Nazis, so I guess corruption should be expected. Like that shouldn't surprise you, the fact that they were buying slaves from themselves. But anyway,
yeah,
the fact
weird.
that he was
Doesn't make any
able to do
sense.
that, and then the conditions in middle work were fucking horrendous, absolutely horrendous. So in an article. This is from it's v2rocket.com, the Middlework Mittelbau Camp Dora article, and it gives you the overview, it gives you the layout of the tunnels, gives you all this stuff, and it talks about the human cost, right? So at one point in time, it's estimated that 17,500 detainees arrived at Dora, and later on there was only 11,000 left. So there's a whole bunch of folks that died, and they didn't die of natural causes. They were worked to death. They were beat to death. They were starved. Illness was a thing, but when you're living in a cave, making big rocks, little rocks.
Little rocks, and weapons, and at the same time, like they weren't given any kind of tools, in fear of retaliation from the slaves. So like they're digging everything with their hands, and I'm sure at the same time being beaten to death and starved and all that good stuff.
Yeah, thousands. So he's thousands of, and this isn't this isn't over the course of 10 years.
Right.
This is 2 years.
Yeah.
This is 44 to 45, maybe a year and a half. In this one particular compound, thousands of people, and we know the one incident where they are suspected of sabotaging because a whole bunch of these V2 rockets started blowing up on the platforms, which I thought was fucking hilarious. And so they got mad. They're like, all right, cool. They figured it was sabotage by the slave labor. So they grab a bunch of these dudes. They tie them to a freaking cable. They grab a crane.
Yeah, the 12 of them at once, yeah.
And they hoist these 12 dudes up in front of everybody else. And then they leave them there.
But at the same time, they also jammed wood blocks and tied wood blocks around their mouths so they couldn't scream or make noise. So all 12 of them were hung together by their wrists. I can't remember if it was like behind their backs or up ahead. But anyway, just hung them up on this crane, just hanging, just as intimidation for the rest of the slaves there.
Yeah, and that became a huge point of contention, and ended up costing that. I think that was what cost Rudolph his job, was because they looked at that incident.
Yep.
He said he had no knowledge of that incident, but then they found the layout of the tunnel, and his office was legit, like, right there.
Yeah, and I want to say like there was someone else that actually snitched on him about that as well. One of his fellow Nazi fellows, freaking like they snitched on him about that, and like they just corroborated the evidence, and they're like, all right, dude, you're out here, bro.
Yeah. So I have this written down here, quote, the Middlework V2 factory produced some 4,575 V2 rockets between August of 44 and March of 45, the period in which these rockets were headed for firing batteries as opposed to earlier on to development testing. It is also estimated that out of the 60,000 plus detainees employed in and around the Mittelbau complex over a 20-month period, 26,500 did not survive. Estimates of the total number of prisoners in the complex at range between 40 and 64,000. Seiler attributes 15,500 of these deaths to the camps or to transports. So they didn't die in the facility, they died in the camps around and then on the trains to get to these places. Back to this, it says, and 11,000 to the period in April 1945 when the camps were evacuated by the SS in the face of American advance. The evacuation was especially barbaric. The SS shot prisoners, herded them into barns, burned them alive, left them to die if they were too sick to walk, or made them part of a walking or rail convoy headed to other concentration camps. Yeah. It was at this time that the Bolek Kaserne, a barracks in Nordhausen, later to be discovered by the U.S. troops, became an SS dumping ground for prisoners from several camps who were too sick to transport, end quote. So there's a lot more folks that die associated with this. But in the concentration camps and the movements and all that other parts. And there's no way that von Braun didn't know about it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, like anybody that was working there at Nordhausen, like they all knew what was going on.
Yeah, you don't just wake up one day and you have 4,000 rockets in 6 months. Yeah. Oh, man, that's awesome. Our guys are working so hard. No, you know exactly what's going on. And then he's made a celebrity. Which
yes.
He's on TV.
Yeah.
He's standing there next to Walt Disney.
Yeah, well, I want to see. He also helped. No, Walt Disney actually helped von Braun develop. I think it was like a gas mask. I guess like the old school gas mask looked too hideous and it was too abrasive to people's eyes. They're like it wasn't attractive enough, right? So he went to Walt Disney, and Walt Disney helped them design a gas mask that kind of looked like Mickey Mouse to make it look more attractive. And I was like, what? So Walt Disney knew this dude, worked with him. Was cool with it.
Well, he was on. There was a TV special hosted by Walt Disney.
Yeah,
I don't know if it was a weekly show. I think it was. And von Braun did a guest appearance on that show.
Yeah, I want to say like they said it was. She said it was the number 2 rated show of that evening or that weekend or whatever. But like 45 million Americans tuned in to like this show.
Yeah.
So it was no small feat, especially like that's like the dawn of the TV. You know what I mean? Like, there's only, 3 channels, 2 channels, who knows? But
at that point in time, it's, 50s, 60s. There's probably at least 5.
At least.
At least 5. Maybe 6. If you had the fancy rabbit ears on top of your TV.
Yeah, sure, yeah. You just adjust it just right.
You got Bobby there, the little kid in the back freaking rolling the thing back and forth. But yeah, it was, and then he goes on to be celebrated. NASA still celebrates him. They give an award out by his name.
What was it? Was it Nixon that gave him an award before he died? Because like they were gonna.
I don't remember.
Yeah, there's I forget what the actual award of the medal is called, but it's like whatever the highest civilian medal is, they're gonna give him that, and then someone objected to it, so they gave him like the one below that as far as
right.
like, in order.
Yeah, they said nah, he was a Nazi. We can't do that.
Well, you can still give him a medal. You got the space, but
yeah.
Like,
well, let's give him this other one here. Well, so yeah, but NASA has an award. I think it's the von Braun Award that they give out still to this day. And when asked about it now, NASA kind of does the whole like,
it was not. What
these
are
are
you
not the
about?
Nazis you're looking
exactly
for, right? Yes, some fucking Yoda shit. It's just, how does that work? And that's insane. So there's some of the cast. There's a lot more folks involved, a lot more crazy stories. But again, we really we will be here for 2 days straight talking about all of the different folks that were involved. And what's really awesome is that in the back of the book here, Annie has a lot of the list of the major players, what they did, where they worked, pictures of them, right? So
yeah.
to include like the dudes, Colonel Laux, who became friends with some of the Germans.
Yes.
Which is a little,
yeah, literally
weird.
He'd invite them over to his house and like they'd spend the night. That kind of like super close like family like relationships.
Yeah,
stunning.
Yeah, kind of gross. Like he got super familiar and very very comfortable. But yeah, so it goes into pictures and then a lot of information about where they ended up, where they worked, and what they did for the United States. And there's some really great stories in there, in addition to some of the places they brought over. There was an island actually here, just in the Cape of Boston, just outside of Boston.
You're talking about Fort Strong?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like the holding area between. It's like the halfway house.
Yeah. Before they went to Bliss.
Before they could take them into Ohio or send them down
Texas.
to Texas.
Yeah. That's. I had to look it up. I was like, is that still around? So I GPSed it on Waze, and like, dude, it's like 45 minutes away, man. It's like right there. Whether or not it's open,
I would say, can we get there?
I don't know. Like, I'm interested in checking it out.
Dude, I would. I mean, there's probably mad ghosts in that shit, but I'd be all over that.
Yeah, dude, it's definitely intriguing.
All right. Okay, so let's take a time out. We got a bunch more to talk about, but we need a break. We need to get some water, some whiskey, and recharge ourselves. So, folks, here's a little a shout out to my folks over at the E14 podcast. We'll do a little promo for them, a little support promo for us. We'll be back in just a second.
How long have you been in the Navy?
Only blended life.
I'm Jamie Britt.
And I'm Heath Britt.
And together we are E14. We have 40 years of naval service.
And each week we discuss a potpourri of topics, which we like to call smoke pit topics.
These are real world topics that concern us, our marriage, and our Navy with a sailor twist.
So join us each week as we dive into the deep end.
Booyah!
Hey friends, it's Ian. I want to ask for your support. Yes, I'm doing it. I'm that guy. So there's a couple different ways you can support the show. If you want to support the show for free, all I need you to do is hop over to iTunes or podchaser.com and drop me a review. These reviews help kind of bolster my ability to get out there and have more people see the show and come and enjoy the whiskey and history and shenanigans that we enjoy on a bi-weekly basis. Now, if you want to go a little bit deeper and you want to hand over $1 or $2, that would be awesome. I have started a page on buymeacoffee.com. So the link is in the show notes, www.buymeacoffee.com/ywhiskey. You can make a donation of however big or however little you want. That's just going to help me buy coffee to stay awake, to keep writing, researching, and pushing this show out to you guys, looking for more guests, and just being an all-around freaking, general kind of fun whatever. To those who choose to donate on Buy Me a Coffee, you will be sent a private link. A private link that will take you to the video vault of Why Whiskey. Yes, we record the videos. So you get to see me and a guest, or just me sometimes, putting the show together. Unedited, nothing. You get to see the flubs. You get to see just exactly how much I say You ever notice that? It's crazy. Anyway, 2 ways to support. Drop me a review or go to www.buymeacoffee.com/ywhiskey and make a small donation to the show. Thanks. Cheers. All right, folks, we are going to take a little bit of a break from the live here, and we're going to do a little bit longer of a reset. We've been going for a little while now, and we're going to hit the bathroom and do some other stuff. So we will come back to you live here in about 5 minutes. We'll come back and continue our conversation, talk about some more people and some more things in and around Operation Paperclip. We'll see you in just a moment.